Good Wednesday evening. Welcome to this week's edition of the Carolina Weather Group discussion. I'm James Brierton. We're going to be talking about weather and its role in the television broadcast industry today. We have lined up some great guests for you, and of course, it's a very active weather night, so we're going to be keeping an eye on some of the severe storms that are making their way across parts of the country. But like we always do, we want to start off the show by welcoming you in and letting you know that if you are watching our live broadcast tonight, you can interact with us on Facebook and Twitter. You can send us your questions and comments, or if you need to catch up on this or any of the other shows later on, you can, of course, always download this in podcast form. Scotty has handed me the reins for the time being, but I want to throw him right back up to him to find out how the weather is and how life is in the mountains. Scotty?
Yeah, it's been a beautiful day today. Sunny skies, temperature of around 70 degrees. We do have a few forest fires in the mountainous areas, and hopefully with the rain coming in the next few days, that'll kind of take care of that. It's very dry up here. We got a little bit of rain last weekend, but we're still running about 2.5 inches below normal for March standards, so we really need some rain up here, and I think our buddy Ricky Matthews, who's normally on tonight, is actually covering forest fires over in East Tennessee, so I hope he can join on later. But yeah, it's been a beautiful day up here, and we're looking forward to some rain, hopefully from the system that's out in the Midwest currently.
That's right. We'll be watching that system to roll into our area late on Thursday, and then the real punch on Friday. I think at last check, SPC had much of the Carolinas in a marginal risk. And let's go on down to Charleston, South Carolina, where Shay says we got a little, you had a little bit of an onshore flow today. There, Shay.
Yes, it's been kind of surprising the last 2 days with mid-Atlantic high pressure to our north, where you would expect a moderate gradient, and actually became very strong today. Yesterday we got up near 30 knots, and today we surpassed that, hit 31 knots at Folly Beach, and that was at, let's see, 10:46 a.m. highest wind reading 36 miles an hour, and that was just from an east-northeast coupling with sea breeze oscillations along the coastline. So I mean, we have, I tell you, it really surprised the forecasters because we weren't expecting something that high, and the build lasted for a good hour and a half to almost 2 hours. So what became seemingly a 15 to 20 knot day became a 25 knot day before it fell off. But yeah, so the last 2 days we've gotten these east-northeast surges down the coastline with some of that sea breeze coupling, and it's been interesting. So we're expecting that very same high pressure is the one that's going to push out into the Atlantic and bring that convergent flow up ahead of that cold front coming across the country now. So we'll be expecting to see some more rains and storms develop along the coastline possibly tomorrow afternoon, and then become more widespread on Friday ahead of along the prefrontal build in the warm sector ahead of that front. So we're kind of bracing. I think we're in the slight risk for Friday, or just on the edge of it. And Savannah is a pretty hot spot right now for water spouting and some tornadic activity. So we'll be in that sector from northern Florida all the way up through about mid to northern South Carolina. So that's where we are right now. At least the temperatures are warm.
Temperatures are very warm as we roll out of March and head closer to the main severe weather season. And speaking of nice weather, we'll throw it up to Kit, who is just north of me on the north side of Charlotte, where the weather's been very nice. I think the worst part, Kit, has been the pollen.
Oh, definitely. I don't think you can tell that the pollen is affecting you.
Not at all.
Yeah, my mom actually texted me today. I was like, thanks for the beautiful weather she's been putting out, pine needles and whatnot, just with it being spring. But yeah, for the most part, it has been clear and a few high-level clouds the past couple of days. Like yesterday, I got an awesome picture of really, really pink cirrus clouds on a deep blue sky. I got the picture. I was going to save it, and my phone died.
Oh.
So it looked awesome, but no one knew. So I just enjoyed the moment when it was. Pretty much the same thing happened today. I saw a sun halo, went to get my phone, went back outside. Not only had the sun halo faded, by the time I got any pictures of it, my phone died again.
We need to get you one of these, my friend. The little portable chargers.
Yeah. Well, I had one. Like, I got it from like a competition thing. I got it, and then it didn't work from my phone. So,
well, you know the saying, Kit, if we don't see it, it never happened.
That's true. So
Either Peter is laughing at you or he's watching cat videos on YouTube. I'm not sure. But Peter, how are things up in the southern Jersey, Philly metro area?
Well, I'm pretty tired of the cool air and the wind we've been experiencing this whole week. We had some pretty windy weather on Monday. It was 40-mile-an-hour gusts or higher. It sounded like my whole house was going to blow away, but luckily the wind died down today. It was a pretty nice day today, only in the 50s, but we're supposed to go up to the 70s tomorrow, maybe some showers and thunderstorms, and then it's supposed to cool down again next week. So just can't win up here. I'm ready for some 70s and some beach weather, but it's just not happening.
Not quite yet. By the way, Kit mentioned that his mother, I think, was putting down pine straw, which as a northerner now in the South is still a practice I don't understand. You don't do pine straw in southern Jersey, do you? Topsoil, right? In the gardens?
Topsoil.
Yeah.
Does it look so much nicer with that nice needling, like dark brown color?
Ew.
The thing I don't understand is it always looks flammable to me. Like,
Well,
it's
yeah.
just going to dry out and go up in flames. That's what I don't understand.
That seems like a personal problem, James. We enjoy pine straw down here in the South, man.
I guess I got a sweet tea from a cookout. I've adjusted to a lot of this, but some of it I'm still trying to come around to. And I think some of our guests tonight can maybe speak to that. I saw that Ricky, there he is. We'll give him just a second to connect because this will be a good segue because Ricky is joining us here a few minutes past the 8 o'clock hour after coming in from covering some wildfires. I don't know if he's connected just yet. Are you there, Ricky?
Hi.
Hello. How are you?
Can you hear me?
You smell like smoke?
A little bit. It was worse in Johnson City than it was where we were. We were actually on the, I guess, the south side of the fire where their lookout guy was. So I was like, well, we're probably in the best spot considering you need to have the best view of the fire overall. So.
Other than that, is the weather okay in your neck of the woods?
They're not doing too bad. We're looking to get that little line of showers and storms, maybe a few gusty winds tomorrow, but it's got our interest peaked in trying to wrangle our work schedules around. That is becoming a little bit tricky, but we'll work on it, and we'll get that all ironed out for tomorrow night.
One of the many pieces of logistics I suppose we will touch on tonight. So without further ado, let's get to our guest panel as we look to have a conversation about weather discussions and the way it works in the TV industry. And we'll start with our returning guest, David Reese, weeknight meteorologist at the Newsplex, which includes WCAV, WUVA, WVA. Pretty much if you watch TV in the Charlottesville, Virginia area, you're probably watching David. So, David, how are you? How's the weather in your neck of the woods? And I know you're also keeping an eye on the weather in other parts of the country tonight.
Yeah, I've been fairly well. I've been running a little ragged here. I haven't had a day off since, Thanksgiving? But yeah, anyway, weather here has been beautiful. Past couple of days, we've topped out in the low to mid-60s. Today, 67. If we hit our forecasted high, about 70 degrees tomorrow, it could wrap up top 5 warmest Marches on record, not only at McCormick, where records go back to the 1870s, but also at Cho, where they've only been keeping records since 1998, November of 98. So they've only been keeping March records in 99. So been rather warm here across central Virginia for the month of March, but as we get into April, we're looking at the cooler weather. I'm a fan of cooler weather, so I'm not going to complain too much.
And Scotty just said in our chat room here that Tulsa National Weather Service Office has a tornado real close to them. I'm going to pop up the screen share here, and we can get some context on some of the severe weather we're watching across portions of the country. But you can actually see it here. If you can see it through the lightning, I think we got a pretty nice, classic-looking hook there just north of the downtown area. David, I know you've been keeping a close eye on that. Do you have anything you want to share with us?
I would go to fox23.com, their live stream. Right now they have cameras looking at that storm. There's been a little bit of lowering every so often. There's definitely some rotation, wall cloud trying to drop. Not seeing anything defined in terms of funnel clouds right now. Obviously not a tornado then, but definitely a wall cloud trying to form there just to the north of the Tulsa metro area, and keeping a close eye on it because even from the sky cams that they have out there, you can definitely see it rotating.
and I'm pulling it up now. We'll take a quick glimpse at it as plays through the ever crucial pre-roll. But that is a station that not only has quite the evening ahead of them, but also where our friend and former colleague is, Naomi Kitt, who not only was hired by our next guest, Mr. Perry Box, who's currently the news director at WSJV, formerly my boss at WRBL in Columbus, along with David.
Yep.
But also our last but not least, last guest here, Steve Smith, who was the professor of Miss Kitt. Steve is the former news director at WXIA in Atlanta, spent some time with ABC News, and now joins us from his ever-glorious retirement in Hilton Head, South Carolina. So how's golfing today, Steve?
It was the usual. I'm consistently inconsistent.
Well, at least you're consistent.
It was breezy and mostly cloudy all day, weather-wise, and very windy. And we had little pop-up showers, which surprised me, but nothing at all that we even had to put on our raincoats for. So it wasn't bad. Golf was great, and had a lot of fun. I was playing with a guy who was in the Coast Guard, telling me stories about spending 108 straight days on a cutter in the Bering Sea in January, February, and March. And talk about weather. Ooh.
That doesn't sound fun.
Not if you're seasick.
Yeah, which I am. So.
And a gentleman who could have some weather in his headlines tomorrow if it makes it far enough north, Mr. Perry Box. Perry, how are you? How have things been?
Well, I'm doing well, and I believe the Weather Service has us with marginal risk tomorrow, though we expect most of it to be actually a little south of our DMA, but we'll be keeping an eye on it. And I do want to go on record, and Steve and I have talked about this before, but Steve, this retirement thing is tiresome. We need to knock this off, and you need to get back to work and turn out some more really talented young broadcast journalists. Steve Smith's seal of approval was just incredible, and that I just have to say that year that I hired James and David and Naomi, and you said I got the top 3 draft picks. It was a remarkable thing to watch the kids that you worked with and how they very quickly became adult, strong, stalwart, just incredibly talented young folks. And
great to hear.
Come back, please.
Okay.
It would not be all that uncommon for somebody to come out of retirement. I will try.
Talk him into it.
David Reese is screaming at me in the text to look at chat room here to look at Fox 23, and I think it's because he wants to show you. Yeah, in Tulsa here, where they're looking at their Skycam at the airport. And David, have you seen anything actually drop down out of the clouds there?
It was about halfway to the ground. I think you're a little bit behind, because either you're behind or I'm behind, either or. But there was a lowering not too long ago that was about halfway to the ground. Just to the north of the Tulsa airport, and yeah, it seems like you're ahead of me. So I'll probably refresh this stream because I've been watching this for an hour now.
The magic of streaming. Yeah, the clock on my screen says 7:16. So actually, I had some notes. I had some ways I was going to segue into different parts here, and I know the rest of the gang will be asking questions as we go along. But I'll take this as a segue and we'll go to Perry, who still sits in the news director chair. He's the guy who's the chief operating officer, if you will, of a TV newsroom. Perry, what goes through your mind as somebody who is managing a team to be prepared for when severe weather comes knocking on your door in your neck of the woods?
Well, the first thing I always think about, and what I always say to the staff that's going out to chase these things is, there is no story worth dying over, and safety is paramount. And You know, I've never had anyone even get hurt on my watch, and I've been a television news director now for 36 years, and you know, I've got a few years left, and I intend to go out with a perfect record. But we remind, and you really don't have to remind after a while. It's about saving lives. It's about getting the information on the air as quickly as you can, but it's about being right. You want to be first, but you want to be right, and if I have the choice of being right or being first, I'm going to take right every single time. But, you know, it's a calling, and people have to be willing to invest. I'm not telling you guys anything because you all work in weather, and I'm certainly not telling Steve anything because he's more senior than I am. But you know, there's a long hours and hard work. Do it right and be safe.
And Smith, let me ask you, you've worn a lot of hats at different size organizations in the TV industry. Your father was a meteorologist, but when you're looking at a television station as a whole, it's got a lot of moving parts. And to somebody who you might be talking to who is not familiar with all those moving parts, what role does that weather part play when you look at the whole television station as a whole? How important is the local meteorologist when it comes to operating a profitable TV station?
Well, as Perry and many of you others know, weather is the #1 reason people watch local television news. So right away, you're at the top of the list, and the meteorologists are become in many markets. The meteorologists are more identified with the station than even some of the news anchors. Now, you get venerable news anchors like you might get in Atlanta or Charlotte, large markets for people like Bill Walker up in Charlotte, extremely well-known guy. But the meteorologists tend to, to stick around, and the trust that's built up in them, because they get, they're on every night and they're making a prediction, and if they're right more often than not, then the audience comes to trust that person a great deal. And it's really a critical part of local TV now, because local news and local weather are becoming essentially the most important elements of programming in local television, because so much else there's so much more content out there that's available in other places. But those two things are not available in other places. And people will go to the TV to watch the weather. I mean, I watch it down here all the time. There's a man here that I've known for a long time named John Weatherby, and probably a bunch of you know John. He was a meteorologist in Chicago and then Atlanta, and now he's down here. And I talk to John frequently, and he's excellent. And he just took over as the main weatherman for Pat Prokop, who'd been at the CBS affiliate here for a long time. And these people become, a huge element in the community, because especially when there's serious weather, and that's when they have to be there. They have to be at the top of their game, and a lot of people have made their reputations during serious weather by being, first of all, right, as Perry says, the most important thing. And we taught this in school. Accuracy is, if you're inaccurate, that's the worst mistake you can make. So they're right, but they're not only right, but they don't panic. One of the things you have to be careful of these days is, as a television meteorologist, is not to panic your audience. You have to be calm. The best weather anchors and the best news anchors are calm when the sand is hitting the window, and that helps everybody else. It's kind of like being parents. When there's a stressful moment, and you've got children, they're looking at you to kind of gauge their own emotions, and if you're calm, they'll be calm, and you can be nervous as all get out. I mean, I imagine some of you have been in situations where tornadoes or hurricanes. I've been in a lot of hurricanes, used to cover them, on the ground, and it can be stressful. Things are falling down all around you, and plus you got to make feeds, and lots of things are happening, but you got to be calm above all.
Well, the goal, we tell our folks, and I don't have to tell it too much because my chief meteorologist has been in the market for 25 years, and he gets it. It's about informing, not alarming. If you get on the air and you alarm, that is not a good thing. Some of you may, know the story that happened in Oklahoma City, within the last couple of years, where meteorologists for one of the stations told, if I recall correctly, it was an F5, or it was later determined to be an F5, and he told people, you need to get in your cars and get away from it, and wrong.
Yeah.
Funny.
And they took him off the air for a couple of months, and he had to come back on and apologize. And that kind of thing is it hurts his own personal credibility, but more than that, the credibility of the institution, the television station, and everything that goes with it is damaged when you have someone do something like that. It's alarming. It's scary. That's not your job. Your job is to provide the information so people can make calm, rational decisions and do the right thing. And I have never seen, a list of tips that says, get in your car and outrace the tornado. So, that's just not a way to operate.
And to reinforce that, one of the things one of my colleagues at Georgia did was research the impact of news and information on children and television and children. And you can scare the bejesus out of little kids by being alarmist, and you've got to be mindful of that, because little kid, for little kids who are inexperienced and haven't been through things, we all know that a half-mile wide tornado is a really big, wide tornado. And a lot of tornadoes are, 100 yards wide, right? But to a kid, you tell them there's a tornado, coming your direction, they think that the whole, that it's enveloping everything. And they really, it's almost a geometric progression in the way they take alarming information. It scares the daylights out of them. So you really have to be careful with that as well.
Go ahead.
Just a quick story that this happened within the past week. We had statewide tornado alarm for the state of Indiana, Severe Weather Awareness Week, and National Weather Service, of course, wants to test EAS, and we got an email from a woman named Cynthia Arthur that came to my general manager, someone at the NBC affiliate, someone at the CBS affiliate, and what she said was the tornado alarms went off, the sirens went off, my husband was on the roof, and it's like, what's going on? They turn on the TV, and the gist of her email was, you got the CBS affiliate, the NBC affiliate, you guys didn't tell us anything. But the Fox affiliate is running the crawl saying, this is a test, and it is soothing and calming, and it's informational, and we're there. And the last thing she said was, we've always liked Fox 28, but now you're the first place we're going to go to. That's over a test. That's how seriously people take weather. And, just parenthetically, my chief meteorologist had personally made sure that the news ticker was set up to be in test mode, so it would play. But above and beyond that, my senior executive producer had created a excuse me, a crawl in News Ticker that we could run manually in case the automation didn't work, because it's a big deal. And that sounds like such a minor thing, but it is amazing how seriously people take this stuff. So even a test, big deal.
And that's a great point, Perry. It's so easy, I think, to win over or lose viewership on any one little tiny thing. And I think we're always looking at the big picture, but it's stuff like that we can't overthink. This is a good transition to a photo that was shared among our group last night, and we were discussing, and it's about the responsibility to share information and not to scare the public. So let me go ahead and screen share this. This is from KFOR. And Scotty, were you the one who found this? This is a recent screenshot talking about today's event. Is that correct?
Yeah, this surfaced last night.
David Brees knows exactly what
I know. I saw it blow up on Twitter last night. Yeah.
And so yeah, I just don't agree with this.
So if you haven't seen it, we'll pop it up on the screen here while I'm talking, but this is a screenshot from KFOR showing the forecast for today, but not only does it mention the chance for tornadoes, but it specifically mentions the strength of the tornado, in this case an F3 out of 5. Now mind you, to play devil's advocate for just a moment, I think Oklahoma is a very special place, and you got to know your audience, and they're a very weather-savvy audience there.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious, and I'm going to ask all three of our guests, 2 guys who spent a lot of time in management and 1 guy who makes a day in and day out call about what graphics he's going to show. Would you ever rank the seriousness of something in terms of its severity when it comes to, and Scotty, help me formulate this if I don't quite word it correctly, but when you're talking about the different strengths of tornadoes, they're all potentially deadly. So are we telling people that an F3 isn't as serious as an F5, or is this too much information, you think, Steve?
Probably. I think the fact that you're saying there's potential for tornadoes, because on a tornado day, you could have everything from F1s to F5s. You don't know. I mean, I don't know how you predict how powerful a tornado is going to be. I mean, they have enough problem trying to, when they go back after a storm and say, well, we judge that to be an F3 or an F4. How you predict what it's going to be? I mean, I'm not a meteorologist, so you guys would know better, but.
I think you're right. We've talked about this just a few weeks ago on the show, or it may have even been last week. We were talking about science just isn't really there to have this nitty-gritty of a forecast. Perry, you've worked with a lot of meteorologists. If you were sitting in your office watching a newscast and a graphic like that came up, what would your reaction be?
Oh, I would be out of my chair in the weather center, and the first chance I got, it would be, what the heck do you think you're doing? I don't know any science that allows you to predict that it's going to be an F0 or an F5. I mean, that's just absurd. And the other point I think that's important here is, as Steve will remember, I worked in the Oklahoma City market back in the 80s.
I do remember that. Yes.
Back in the 80s. You remember the plane crash, the F-16 that went into the house, and
yes.
Anyway, I'm digressing, but Oklahoma City is an incredibly weather-savvy market, and when a meteorologist goes on and does something like that, I'm just guessing here, but I would think that a whole lot of people are going, how the hell is he predicting that? That doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I recognized him. Hasn't he been there a long time at 4?
Scotty or anybody else know?
Yeah, he's been there quite a while.
Who is it, Scotty? I couldn't tell.
That's Mike Morgan, the same guy you're speaking of.
Okay,
earlier.
that's Mike Morgan. You'd think he'd know better after all of this.
Do you think it was just competitive advantage?
And I know
Mike.
I don't know. I hired Mike when I was at Cocoa. He was a part-time guy in Tulsa, still in school, and he did weekends for me. And then he ended up, across the street full time. And I don't know what he's thinking, but to me, it's just irresponsible. Not acceptable. The
Mike was there.
Management ought to reel that in.
Perry, were you there? You weren't there in the 90s when the first Moore tornado went through, were you?
No, I was there from 83 to 88.
And I remember Mike, because I think I met him when I came out there, when we were doing our trips. I think I met Mike out there.
Yeah. Gary England in Oklahoma City is iconic. A lot of people, and I think Mike may be one of them, they've tried to pattern themselves after Gary, but I never saw Gary do anything like that. Gary was responsible, and he beat my brains out. I was at Cocoa, and he was at KWTV, and a lot of the fact that they were number one for so long, you could lay that at his doorstep. People trusted him and they believed him, and I don't know that Gary ever did anything, at least during the time I was there. And as I read things about the market, I don't think he ever did anything to betray the trust, and you can't afford to do that. You just can't betray the.
Well, Gary was on the show a few weeks ago, and he talked about how one of the things that he's proud of is their storm chasers. And so I'll use this as a segue. This is a live look. Val Castor, one of his station there, News 9 in Oklahoma City, using Facebook Live, a new tool that is available to us on the ever-expanding social media market, and so we are taking the ride with him in real time as he's chasing these storms, a technology that they've developed and we're using on TV now for probably a decade or so. But there's a lot of responsibility, I think, that goes into social media. David said that he saw the screen share we showed you just moments ago blowing up on Twitter last night. You've got everybody, I'm looking at TweetDeck right now, talking about these storms that are moving through the Tulsa area, including big organizations, not just the local organizations. CBS News, at CBS News on Twitter, just tweeting, breaking, tornadoes forming near Tulsa, Oklahoma. David, as a young TV meteorologist, talk a little bit about the responsibility that goes into being responsible, sharing information, but not scaring people not only on TV, but also on social media.
And I mean, especially with somebody like me who is on the younger side and what we would call a millennial, I know that a lot of my generation is very iPhone-y, very Twitter-y, very Facebook-y, and you just have to be very careful as to what you're putting out there for the public for what you're trying to show to the public. And as far as what he was showing, there's no way in the world I would ever show that. I mean, it's a good graphic, just get rid of the F3. First of all, it's EF3, but I digress. That's the first thing that I saw that was wrong with that graphic, and I was just like, wait, is he really calling? Okay, that's the other thing. But anyway, and social media is changing rapidly. I mean, I've been in this business since October of 2010, so I've been in here almost 5.5 years. And I mean, it's changed so much, at least in the social media game, that it's not even funny. Like, I've had to work to keep up with it, and sometimes I do see it pass me by, and I'm trying to play catch up, especially with all this Snapchat and everything else going on with that. Still trying to work on that. But anyway,
let me know when you figure it out.
yeah, I know. Anyway, but it's just like meteorology and meteorologists, we're there to inform the public in a smart and logical way. We're not there to hype things up. We're not there to alarm anybody. We're there to give people the facts and let them know what they could potentially do. That's why you hear a lot of meteorologists say, get to the innermost section of your house or get to the basement, things like that, just in case they are panicking and they need that reminder. It's like, oh yeah, that's what I can do, and get down into the basement or get into the hallway and get that bicycle helmet or anything else. But also just let the people know, hey, I think the storms are going to be over the top of Tulsa, Oklahoma between this time and this time. Just be weather aware and just try not to hype anything up. Hyping things up is putting graphics like that out on the air, not only on the air, but also on social media, saying that there's going to be F3 tornadoes. I mean, the only time that I would even remotely have thought something like that was back on April 27th, 2011. It's just like, hey, we knew there were going to be really strong tornadoes that day. Today, not so much, but that doesn't mean that you can't have an F4, F5 develop, and we're not to that point of calling things out the day before things happen, at least in terms of tornadoes. We can give you a generalized area, we can give you a generalized couple of counties, but we can't tell you, hey, there's going to be an EF3 rolling down Searcy Avenue at 5:15. That's not possible yet. So what we have to do is just be like, hey, make the forecast, give the forecast as accurately as we can on air, and inform the public to the best of our ability, and not only do that all on air, but also social media, because again, social media is becoming a bigger and bigger portion of my job, because a lot of our viewers are going from the big screen, aka TV, to the smaller screen, which is our phones now.
Scotty, I think you have a question?
Yeah, first of all, I don't know, I'm screen sharing my thing here, but I'm actually seeing a tornado with the sun setting here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I thought that was pretty cool. But as we're talking of tornadoes, I have a question for all three of you guys. As we've discussed, the Oklahoma City is the metro. That's weather savvy people. Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Dallas, Wichita, that area is all weather savvy. But my question to you guys, especially to Perry, you and Steve, here in the past several years, not local media, but national media, the last one I can remember is NBC running a story on the nightly news about tornadoes coming in unwarned in the Alabama area. I think it was back before Christmas, or right after Christmas. And in those areas, James Spann, Mark Prater, those guys were talking 2-3 days ahead of that. You know, we're going to see the potential of tornadoes, severe storms. But then the national media jumps on this and paints the pictures. It came up unexpected, unwarned, and how that really demotes or decredits the meteorology field. Can you kind of speak on that? Why maybe the national media takes that stance, and it kind of, and David, I'd love for your opinion on this, and Ricky as well. It kind of lowers our credibility when, yeah, in fact, we have been talking about that for the past couple of days. We have been saying, hey, there's a chance. But the national media, people watch the nightly news, and it's kind of the exact opposite, per se.
I'm going to defer to my colleague with the network experience and let him answer first.
I think probably in that case, they weren't referring to a day or two before about warning. I think that they might have been referring to, and I have some recollection of this happening, that the sirens did not go off at the point where the tornado had actually formed and was hitting. I don't know for sure, but that's probably what they were referring to. That the tornadoes, even though there was chances of it and people had been forewarned for a couple of days, which I'm amazed at how good the weather forecasting has become, really. I watch the Weather Channel a lot, and they do a really good job of letting you know that in a couple of days you're gonna have to pay close attention. But that might have been a very specific, for a very specific time. I'm not defending them. I'm just saying that's probably what happened, and part of it is it depends on who the reporter is. It depends on who the producers are in New York and how they want to play a story. And if the story is what a lot of people are out there saying, is that a real tornado we're looking at right there?
Yes, it is, Smith. I'm going to interrupt you just a second. This is KOTV's Chopper. This is north of Tulsa, Oklahoma. It looks, and David Reese, I know you've been following this closely as well, that looks like it's now on the ground.
Yeah, that actually looks like a tornado. That doesn't look like a funnel cloud anymore. That definitely, that's a tornado. I'm seeing it.
So again, this is KOTV's Chopper, one of the many pieces that go into covering a tornado outbreak, especially in that part of the country, and I was trying to see if it was lifting up there, but now I still see some dust and debris spinning on the ground there. So keeping a close eye on that. We are going to get to a part of this discussion where we're going to talk about technology, which is why I definitely wanted to pop that up. But
there goes the game.
Oh, there you go. Look at that.
But that's only a couple. That looks like it's maybe no more than 25 or 30 yards wide, isn't it?
From this angle, I would say so, yes. I would certainly say this seems to be a little bit more contained than some of the other ones, but...
Where I live, we'd call that a water spout.
But Smith, to your last point, there are a lot of people involved in this process, especially on the network level. How do you protect against things like that when it comes to such a large group of people?
Well, you just have to understand it, and probably the situation was that they could differentiate between, they'd been informed a couple of days beforehand that the tornadoes were possible, but when these tornadoes actually struck, and again, I don't know this exact situation, but when these tornadoes actually struck, the sirens didn't go off, and they had they may have had a little warning that it was actually happening now. Now, do you know, Scotty, if that was the case, or?
From what I understand, what happened, and again, I'm going to kind of read back a little bit. It seems only happened in the southern states, Alabama, Mississippi, places like that. When it's out Midwest, everything's, everybody knows about it. But from what I understand, it was just the way that the reporter wrote the story. He said that the people in that area, again, and not all places in the South have tornado warning sirens, and that's a whole different show that we could do. But that area in particular didn't have the warning sirens, and the tornado came. But again, the point was, in James Spann, there's a meme going on. I wish I could have found it before the show, but it was just talking about how everybody knew that this was happening, but then the national media came in and portrayed it as it wasn't happening. Ricky, you may remember what I'm talking about. Feel free to jump in.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt. I think you called on Ricky.
Go ahead, Perry.
Yeah.
Well, my kids, my adult children, live in Birmingham, and that's where I vacation. So I follow media down there quite a bit. And at one time, I was news director at one of the Birmingham stations. My recollection of this incident, if I'm recalling correctly, it was on ABC. It was Diane Sawyer. I don't remember who the correspondent was, but the fact of the matter was, they got it wrong. There was warning. Spann was furious about it, and there was this exchange of, news stories back and forth, and they were in full-blown wall-to-wall coverage while all of this was going on. And I think one of the things that has happened, and this is cultural, and it relates to the editorial posture that we see the national media taking more and more, which I see with great chagrin, that they have to enlarge things beyond what they really are, it was flabbergasting to me that they came on and said without warning, when I know that not just James Spann, but Mark Prater and all of the stations were in wall-to-wall coverage saying this is serious crap and tornadoes are coming. So how they could extrapolate that into nobody got a warning, fact of the matter is there are a fairly good distribution of sirens around the South now. One or two of them fail here and there, like anywhere. And I just thought it was a distortion of what really happened.
Gee, Perry, now your experience with network producers and correspondents coming to your station and working, they know exactly everything that's going on, right?
Oh yeah, and most of them are good, well-intentioned people. But Steve knows how they live, and I've had friends that were network producers. Ken Strickland, who's the bureau chief for Washington bureau chief for NBC News. I hired as a noon producer at WVTM in Birmingham, and we're good friends. And he traveled with Claire Shipman. He did all that field producing stuff, covered the White House and all of that. But in those days when you're on the road, it's like drop in, learn as much as you can, get it on the air. The deadline is irrevocable, and it's a system that is set up to stumble occasionally. And when they do stumble on something like this, they just don't. It's management above them that doesn't want to say.
Well, I'll give you an example.
How's that one?
I'll give you an example. This is not weather, but this is news. A friend of mine, a longtime reporter in Atlanta and Cleveland, very, very smart guy, was sent by ABC as a stringer with his camera and to do radio, and if anything happened, to the Trump event where the guy jumped on the stage. And, that was a couple of weeks ago. And he told me, he emailed me, and he said he filed a report for radio, and he said that Trump's bodyguards tackled the guy as he came onto the stage, and this young woman in New York said, "Oh no, those are Secret Service agents." And he said, "No, the guys that tackled him were Trump's bodyguards. He was there, he knew it, he was right." And she says, "No, you gotta say they're Secret Service." And he says, "You know what? I'll say anything you want me to say. Okay, they were Secret Service." He finally gave up. But they get this idea that they know, and this is a terrible thing to say, I'm afraid, but in Arkansas, not far from where Perry grew up out there were a couple of tornadoes in November, and they tore up in a mobile home park. And I was on the phone with a desk assistant in New York, and she said, "Gee, it seems like every time there's a tornado in the South, it wrecks a mobile home park." And I told her, "Forgive me, guys," but I said, "Well, you understand that mobile home parks cause tornadoes." And she said, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." So to get all that aluminum in one place with the interaction with the electrons and everything, it creates wind, and they cause tornadoes. That's why they blow them up. And she says, "I never knew that." And I'm like, so I tell you a story that I probably shouldn't have told, but there you go. And she probably thinks that's true till this day.
Do you think, I don't want to go down too far down this road because I know we have a lot of other things we want to hit upon and we're running out of time, but Steve, real fast, in your experience in working in Atlanta at local and network TV, did you ever find there's a New York bias to things?
I'll start with the New York bias to the entire South. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I had Peter Jennings tell me one day, "You need to read this book by," I can't remember the guy's name. He came and researched a book in the South for 3 months, and Peter read it and said, "He knows everything about the South. You need to learn from that, Steve." And I've lived in the South, for 40 years. And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, Peter. Yes, there is." And that might have played into the story here that Perry just told me about, about ABC reporting that it was unwarned. I mean, there's a bias against the South, and New York's pretty much biased against the rest of the country, for that matter. But you guys have all seen that map, haven't you?
New York and everything else. I've been here for 6 years, and I'm still learning it, per our conversation about pine straw, which I still don't understand.
Well, I find it remarkable that, when I was in Madison, Wisconsin, we could have, 14, 16 inches of snow on the ground, and it's a big story. But we do get the roads cleared because we know what we're doing, and we do here too.
And your taxes are a lot higher than ours. That's why you get.
Yeah, you know, it might get a 15-second mention on nightly news, but you know, get 6 inches of snow in Washington D.C. and it's like, you know, snowmageddon. There's a level of absurdity in the editorial process that those of us who work with them, well, I'd be amused by it if it wasn't so sad.
Yeah, and I look at it now, and of course, you know, older people always look at the generations coming up and saying, "Oh, it's so different, and we did it so much better." That's inherent. I mean, that was going on when I was your age, from the people that had been around a long time. But there is a lot of that going on. Perry's absolutely right, and we've both experienced. We've been on both ends of it, and you know, and that's just a lack of respect as much as anything else. You know, a lot of times people in New York just simply don't respect people in other parts of the country. Maybe California they will, you know, but
California is its whole other thing.
You know, that's good.
I'm going to throw it to Scotty. He has a question about. We'll bring this back to the conversation of local TV news. Scotty.
Yeah, why tornadoes is an important topic tonight. Different stations, different DMAs go about tornado warnings. Some break in for coverage, kind of do an update, 1, 2, 3 minutes off, back to regular programming. Some stations require you to be on throughout the entire warning. And Perry, I guess my question to you is, as a news director, how do you fight the battle of wanting to warn the people in your area, but also trying to take all the phone calls from the angry viewers who are not getting to watch Dr. Phil or Judge Judy or whatever the case may be? Kind of
Or
talk
Atlanta
about
Falcons game.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I knew you were going to say that.
You know, that for me, that's easy. You know, I have an affirmative obligation, not only as a responsible journalist and as a human being who thinks that life is sacred and important, but you know, the FCC, which regulates our industry, suggests very strongly that we're in the business of public safety first and foremost. It's just a no-brainer. You know, if I'm good, I don't care. You know, you miss Dr. Phil. I'm used to that. Bitch at me, good. How nice. You know, I wait for the first swear word because that's my ticket out. Okay, now you're cussing. Nothing in my contract says I have to listen to that. Goodbye. Click. It's just. It's not a question. That's our obligation, right, Steve?
Yeah, tornado warning, absolutely. But I'll relate something to you that happened here last year. The Heritage Golf Tournament is played here the week after the Masters every year. And we had bad weather on the Sunday, the last day of the tournament, so they started early and finished at 3 o'clock. And we watched them finish, and Jim Furyk won, and we walked home and turned on the TV, and they started their coverage. Well, they were able to, you know, telescope the coverage, so they finished at 6 o'clock, dead on. Well, because of the bad weather that was happening, one of the local stations here, and I won't name it, but one of the local stations that we happen to be watching, you can figure that out if you know who broadcast that tournament, interrupting, and rightly so. There was some severe weather, severe thunderstorms with, don't know that there were any trophonal clouds, might have been a couple of them. But that's like between 3:30 and 4:40, and that's all going on. Well, so they keep coming on every 20 minutes, and they've been instructed to do that. At 3 minutes, so now the storm's passed. Everything's fine. You know, by 5:15 it was fine. At 5:57, when Jim Furyk was standing over the putt that won him the tournament. Now this is their tournament. This is this local station's tournament. They cut away and said, well, we tell you everything is just fine. You know, the storms are over with and everything else. And it was like the poor weather guy, he hadn't been watching program. And so he comes on to tell us, oh, everything's fine. And we're going, what? You're kidding.
Yeah.
Well, I will tell you that a news director lost their job because of that. And
that's when you shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah, and you've got to be. that's where it's overkill. You got to be careful of overkill. But a tornado warning in your town, yeah, you got to be on the air. And who cares? I mean, I love Dr. Phil, so I hate to miss that.
David, I guess to bring you into it, I'm assuming that you've been able to ward off all the nasty emails and phone calls that come your way throughout your career there.
Oh, most definitely, and I can throw in a couple of my own examples. Let's see, there was late March of 2011, started a whole string of an active late March and through April 27th of that year, in which we were tracking tornadoes every 5 to 7 days down across east central Alabama, west central Georgia area. And I was 6 months on the job. There was a tornado watch for areas off to the south, the three very southern counties, and it was during March Madness.
Oh.
And it was, I remember the Florida Gators playing. I don't remember who they were playing, but I just remember Florida Gators because, well, I'm not a huge Florida Gator fan. Anyway, and there was a tornado warning for one of the southern counties. I had to make the decision to cut on, and I also had to get in contact with the news director and general manager because March Madness is one of the higher paying times in which advertisers get. So here I was having to dance my way around commercial breaks and timeouts for a tornado that was about 80 miles from where a good 80% of the population lived, but I still had to go on air. It was, as Perry said, my responsibility due to the FCC is public safety. Well, I had to go on air for probably about 5-10 minutes straight saying, hey, tornado going just north of Cuthbert, Georgia, and it's on the ground, confirmed. Then Facebook lit up. Oh my goodness, it was absolutely ridiculous. So when the next day it was confirmed that, yes, there was a tornado, tossed it, one trailer, it tossed it 3 times. There was a family of 4 living in it. Thankfully, they had minor injuries, no deaths, but it hit one trailer. The rest trees. One trailer. So we cut on for one trailer, and I said in all of it, posted on all those nasty Facebook messages, like, if this was coming towards your house, you would have wanted to know. That got those people to shut up real quick. Then, as we got into November 2014, James remembers this, maybe Perry too, I know he was in Indiana already, but this was the Sunday before Thanksgiving. It was in November. Hey, tornadoes happen in the Deep South in November. That's their second mini tornado season. Atlanta Falcons were playing. We're a CBS affiliate down there. And not only were they playing, but they were playing the Cleveland Browns. Well, it just so happened that the Cleveland Browns starting running back was a local kid, and we had to cut into programming for a tornado that was semi-continuous for about 120 miles on the ground. So we were on air for about, say, 2.5 hours, and that was probably the most hate mail and hate phone calls that I have ever received. And again, every time on Facebook, it's just like, hey, we did this because there was reported damage. We're on the air. And we had just switched over to a new directing board, and we hadn't had everything set up exactly right. And so by the time some of the directors figured out how to do the pullback so they can show the end of the Falcons game, well, it was in time to see the Cleveland Browns kick a field goal for the Atlanta Falcons to lose. That probably infuriated them even more. But, hey, it's our duty as broadcast TV stations for us to cut on the air in case there's any tornado warnings across the area. And I had to do the same thing back in February 24th up here in Charlottesville. Had that Appomattox tornado. That's not in my DMA, but it's just south. But we had to cut on briefly, and then once the tornado warnings went out for my DMA, the chief and I were on air for about 2.5 or an hour and a half leading into news, and they were getting calls into the newsroom asking where Judge Judy was, because we were only doing it on CBS as it wasn't in fact impacting the city of Charlottesville, where again a good 90% of the population lives. But still, like, again, like that's our duty, is public safety first and foremost, and that's what we have to do.
You should have told him Judy was on her condo balcony in South Florida.
That would have been a good one.
Yeah.
David, I remember during the Atlanta Falcons game, Naomi came up the hall and she said to us, "The phones, they won't stop ringing." And I just said to her, I said, "Unhook them. Just turn them off."
I wonder if Dane still has any of the voicemails recorded on his phone.
Probably does.
Oh my goodness, the voicemails were entertaining.
They were. It's a few minutes past 9 o'clock, and I know I promised these guys we'd be on for about an hour, so I want to give them the opportunity that if they have to jump off, they have early mornings, they are welcome to do so. Before we do let all these guys go, I know Scotty has a question for them that the great Joey often asks, and before we let David Reese go, I was hoping he can give us a little bit of a tour of his weather center. Do you guys have anything else you want to throw in before we start to wrap things up a little bit?
Man, I love this conversation. I'd love to continue it. There's just this always fascinates me, just the inner workings of things. So I appreciate you guys coming on. And I guess if you want me to, James, I'll go ahead and ask Joey's question since he is not here. He's on spring break this week, if everybody's wondering where he's at. So.
I say we ask the question, and then we give these guys the opportunity if they want to stick around as we head into OT, or if they need to jump off, to make sure they get to their assignment meetings promptly and on time and ready to go. Yes, Barry, talking about me.
The meeting starts at 9 o'clock, James. And if you're not here, we're locking the doors. Remember that?
Yes, and Perry will then remember me doing the same thing in his shop. I am not a morning person.
Me either.
But damn, you were one hell of a rock star, son.
Well, once I finally got there and drank some coffee, maybe.
Well, Joey's question normally is, we do have a lot of high school, middle school students that watch, a lot of teachers, a lot of meteorology students throughout the southeast that watches the show. Tongue-tied there for a second. What kind of advice would you give those guys who are going through these programs right now to be successful, not only in the broadcast or in the broadcast field, as well as maybe the broadcast meteorology field?
Well,
yes, Steve, I'll let you go first.
Yeah. Well, they need to, if they want to be meteorologists, they need to know science. I mean, they got to get involved in the science of it early and often, because I considered at one time going back to meteorology school, and they sent me the material. It was at Florida State, actually, David, and
yes,
they sent me the material, and I looked at the math class was required, and I said, I guess I'll stick to being an assignment at it. And so the science is really important. I think that they watch as many of the weather shows as they can watch, because I watch a lot of weather because it really interests me. Both from it had to as professionally, like it does for Perry and those of you guys that are working in it. And I learn a lot every day. I mean, I've learned an immense amount just watching, but they can learn a lot online too about what the weather is, and just by watching what people do. Now, as far as the broadcast part of it, you have two elements here. We used to joke that when it was in the air, it was weather, and when it was on the ground, it was news. But you got to know both, and you got to understand storytelling, because in effect you are telling a story every time you go on the air about tornadoes on the way, or tornadoes don't worry me here, but hurricanes certainly get my attention, living on the coast. And you're telling stories, and you're trying to take a subject that's, I mean, let's face it, the science of weather is extraordinarily complex, and your jobs as weather communicators is to take these complex subjects and distill them so we used to say either an 8-year-old, an 8th grader, or an 88-year-old can understand what you're talking about. So they have to be able to, they have to be generalists in a lot of ways, know a little bit about a lot of things, but be able to talk to people who know a lot about a specific subject and distill that in a way that is accurate and understandable for a wide audience. So watch weather on TV, learn the science, and learn how to communicate. Tell stories. Learn how to tell stories.
I know I'm not supposed to do this part because I talk all the time on the show about that, but you're talking about watching the weather on the TV. One thing that I love to do, and what I was doing before the show and what I've been doing while the show is on back and forth is watching how other meteorologists and how other news stations treat severe weather, doing these tornado warning during the live streams and stuff like that. And I think that's one key, just to play off what you're talking about, is how you can learn and how to make how to get better in the job is to watch how other meteorologists treat situations and what kind of information they give out. So I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Absolutely.
No, I totally agree with that. And you can say what you want about James Spann in Birmingham. Some people, I mean, he is an icon down there. He owns weather down there. Not that Mark Prater doesn't do a good job and other folks do good jobs, but he has total trust and wants to do severe weather. Any opportunity you have to watch them produce live, he does it. Filter out the arrogance. If you live there, you don't see it as much, and it doesn't matter as much to you. But filter all of that out and just listen to the stories he tells, how he communicates what's happening in a very personal way to people, and the way he involves the other people on the team. I don't think anyone does it better. He's a superb broadcaster and meteorologist, and there's just an immense amount to be learned from him. On a broader level, to be practical, I want to totally reinforce what Steve said about knowing the science. If you're advising people about meteorology and they want to be, they're going to give lip service to the science and the coursework and all of that, and they're going to rely on the National Weather Service. And no, that's not going to work because, the National Weather Service is declining. You have to know it yourself. You have to be able to do it yourself. You have to have a collegiality in your team. Most stations have 2, 3, big markets 5 meteorologists, and you have to work the forecast. You have to know what's going on. Sometimes the Weather Service is calling, the TV guys and saying, "What do you think about this?" The ones whose egos aren't totally out of sight. But you got to know the stuff, and you got to be able to tell it in a conversational way. Talk like you and I talk, and your basic weathercast. If you do the same thing every night in the same order with the same graphics, then you're not doing the job. Because I think that weather, just like news, has a lead. There's a most important thing in the weather, and that is the story you tell. And if you're going to start every night with, whatever, radar, when there's nothing on the radar, and believe me, there was a company, and I'll not name it, but it was a big company who dictated that every night, because they bought this Viper system, the weather guy had to begin every night with Viper. Well, there's nothing on it. Why am I putting it on the air? That's stupid. Design your weather for your viewer and be conversational, be reassuring, and know your stuff. Find a mentor. That's the other key thing.
Yeah.
Find somebody that will care about you as a human being and will bring you along, and listen to them. And they're not always going to be right, but they're going to make you think. That's how you get better in this business. Make somebody care about you as a human being.
And here's something else, Scotty, that they can do, is they can practice. They can practice on their family. You know, have them put together a little weather forecast of their own and practice. I mean, that's how you get, and part of that practice, and Perry touched on this a little bit, and I want to reinforce that, is the conversational part of it, is that you have to, a lot of people, meteorologists, are very, very intelligent people who know a lot of technical information. But they can't talk down to their audience. They have to be on the same level. They cannot be, you know, like Perry said, if you ignore the arrogance. Some people will get it, Perry, but you've got to be part of them and talk with them, not to them. Mm-hmm. And that's real important. And I think if they practice, you know, just have them practice. We had a young guy in school who, you know, at Georgia, when he was 10 years old, was practicing. And he's working at CNN now. He's not on the air. He's a writer producer there, but he practiced. He had a microphone, and he was out in a snowstorm. I saw it at his rehearsal dinner for his wedding. They had a party. You know, they put tapes together, and he was doing a live shot in Cobb County during a snowstorm with a mic and everything else, and it was hilarious. He was 10 years old. And he signed off for 11 Alive News, and he ended up being a reporter there several years later. So, do you know McAfee, James? Do you know Mark McAfee?
I do. I was wondering if that's who we were talking about.
Yeah, it was McAfee. So, he practiced. So, practice is good. And, you know, kids love to play. Practice, they do it. You know, my grandkids do it. And they'll get a kick out of it. That's what you can tell them. Hey, you got to practice. Get used to being in front of people. You know, don't be afraid to present yourself. Even if you never do television, it's great training for whatever you might do in life, to be able to stand up in front of people and talk to them and tell stories and explain things to them.
People going into broadcasting, you got to get the feedback too. And you know, news director, if I described my day to you today, and you know, I'm working in a medium market in you know, South Bend, Elkhart, Indiana, which Steve is very familiar with because he has family up here. But even in this size market, you know, my day, there wasn't a free minute anywhere in there. But yet, I somehow found a way to have, I don't know, two or three different reporters were in asking about stories, wanting feedback. And if you have friends who are working in a place where they don't get feedback, then they got to get the feedback somewhere else. That's how you grow. Somebody investing in you as a person to make you better because it matters to them that you're better. And this is a vocation. All of it is. Every aspect of broadcast television news is a calling. And if you don't feel that calling, then you shouldn't be in it. Find something that you're called to. And that's what I tell all of these young people. It is not about being on television. It is about service. It's about saving the country. It's about the existence of the republic. It's about saving lives. It's about doing the right thing.
You know, and all of these young meteorologists know it's for the money.
Wait, there's money in TV?
No, there's no money in TV. You know, there is eventually down the road, but you know, I know what I was paying David and James in Columbus. And it's embarrassing, and that's one of the problems with our industry. And I could go on at some length about what, and Steve could too, about what has happened to our business since Reagan deregularized the television industry in 1984 and did away with the ownership limits and the crossover regulations, and all of a sudden investors were involved and blah blah blah. And it's not a pretty picture.
That's 10 more shows.
Yeah, that's about a whole bunch of shows. But get the feedback.
Spectrum auction.
Yeah, that too. I mean, that's the whole thing is crazy, but it is so fulfilling to do good work. And there are I find the smart ones, and from that moment on, I'm going to be there for them. And that's what you need to advise all of the people that you guys interact with. Find that person that is going to care about who you are.
I still talk regularly to several dozen former students, and not just former students but former colleagues, and Perry among them. And we had you establish these relationships with people, and it's effective. It works. So now we're getting a view of the Charlottesville.
Yeah, and I will say before we toss it to David that I want to embarrass both Steve and Perry by saying these guys just don't talk the talk, they also walk the walk, because I consider both of them mentors of mine, and it's for the exact reasons that they just described. So they are there to critique, they are there to advise, and they will both attest to I haven't made a single major decision, personal or career, without calling these guys to get some feedback. So thank you guys for not only talking the talk but also walking the walk, and for coming on tonight, and for all of that. David, did you want to add to that and also show us around your weather center? I know you have a 10 o'clock show coming up that you'll have to prepare for.
Yes, I do. And I mean, Steve, I had to come over and charge my phone. It came up 20%. I'm like, oh, no, I thought this was charged before coming on. But, I mean, Steve and Perry nailed pretty much all of it. And to expound on a little bit of what they're talking about knowing the science, it's not only about knowing meteorology itself, but knowing a little bit about all the sciences, because you're going to be called upon to know about earthquakes. I mean, back in, 2011, we had an earthquake here in Louisa, which is about 30 miles away, and it rocks here in Charlottesville. It did damage up in D.C. It was felt up and down the eastern seaboard. Guess what? Earthquakes aren't under the meteorology umbrella, but it's under the geography umbrella and geology, and you have to know a little bit about plate tectonics. You have to know which one is a subduction fault or slip zone fault and all this other stuff. So you have to know not only about the meteorology, you also have to know a little bit about everything else as well, because in many locations, you're the station scientist. You're the only one who knows a lot about that science. And it's very important to not only just study meteorology, but I also did a course in GIS. I also did a course in geology. I also did a little bit of oceanography when I was at Florida State, just to have that background, and also a little bit in chemistry as well. So all of that is very important.
No, David, I coached students to do exactly what you're talking about, which is don't just be able to be a weather person, but be the science reporter.
Yep.
Be the go-to person for science, because the more valuable you make yourself, the more opportunities you're going to have. And one young lady did exactly that. She worked for Sinclair doing weather for 3 stations in 3 different time zones out of Baltimore. But now she's one of the main weather people in the Chicago station. She's terrific. I woke up one morning and she's on GMA, and I'm thinking, that's pretty cool. But she had marketed herself as both a science and meteorologist. So you're right on about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, and the other thing is too, it's just like if you're very serious about getting into the broadcast industry, it's yes, getting that mentor, but also it's like getting those internships in. I know I talked about this last time, but that is very important, and that's also a way to get your foot into the business, and also to start to network. It's just like, hey, I know so-and-so, he taught me this, and when I was an intern, I not only practiced for about 2 hours every morning, I went out with a photographer and a reporter almost every afternoon. I learned how to shoot. I learned how to write a little bit. I learned how to put together a package and edit tape to tape. Yeah, that was entertaining. But it's just And then after I graduated, they had a position for a photographer, and I was hired on as a photographer for literally a day before I got the call to Columbus to come up and be their meteorologist. So you never know what doors you're going to open up. So if you're very serious about getting into this business, find internships. And also practice. But internships are very helpful. And if you're a freshman and in high school, you can just go talk and maybe job shadow. But once you start getting into college and you're like, hey, can I come intern at the local TV stations? Because a lot of college towns do have a local TV station of some sort nearby. Just go and do that during the fall or spring, or go back to your hometown and intern there, and try to branch out a little bit too. Don't only do like the college or hometown, but try to go, say if you're in Florida, try to go out into the Midwest, see what it's like out there. Try to go to the West Coast, because the weather is different across the entire country, and you don't know where you're going to end up, not only for your first job, but second, third, or even the longer term job that you might have.
I want to give David some. Go ahead, Barry.
Yeah, I'm going to have to drop off here in a minute. I just before I do, because I'm old now and I have to go to bed. It's a bitch, isn't it, Steve? Isn't it just a bitch?
I produced 11 o'clock news for 20 years that I stay up till midnight every night anyway. So I don't give up.
I DVR everything, and I'm always a day behind on watching. But David said something that's real important there for you guys to pass on, and that this whole internship issue. I am flabbergasted how many people apply for jobs who have not done an internship, and nobody's going to get hired these days. The reverse of that is the people who have done 6 of them, and you got to do that. If you don't, you're shooting yourself in the foot. And the more you know about this business, the better off you are. And I guarantee you that James Brierton, right now, he could be my internet director. He could be my weather guy. He could anchor the news. He could do the sports. He could run, any live thing I've got. He knows how to do it all. What he understands is the communication of information and the connection with people, and that's just invaluable. I would hire him anywhere, anytime. And on top of that, he's just a damn good human being.
James is making us look real good, isn't he, Perry?
Yeah, I was just thinking, while Perry may be stretching the truth here about me a little bit, he's definitely lying when he says sports.
Yeah,
I was hire me to do sports.
James doesn't know the.
You wouldn't understand it. You wouldn't know a damn thing about it, but you'd put it on the air.
So James, what you need
people
to be
would believe
doing?
You.
What you need to be doing now is saying, "Are you hiring?"
Yes. Yes. Perry, I'll be right there.
All right, one last selfish thing. We are looking for a weekend meteorologist / MJ, and I know meteorologists hate that because it means they have to be a news reporter 3 days a week, a glorified one-man band. But it's a family-owned company. James knows how to get a hold of me. He has my cell phone number. He has permission to give it to anybody that he trusts to have it. And if you guys know anybody that's looking, this job is not posted. There's an MJ job posted, but I'm more and more inclined to eliminate a part-time situation I've got going and make it a full-time job. So if you know anybody that's looking, let them know to give me a call.
You've heard it here first.
And on that happy note, I'm going to have to go away.
Barry, one more thing. I'll give you a call the first week in September. We're up there for Becky's 50th college or high school reunion. So.
Oh, fantastic!
I'll be a few miles away from you over in Goshen.
Yeah, we'll do a meal. And I forgot. Thanks for the tip on the family trip to Washington.
How'd that work out?
It worked out real well. Turned out to be a couple of really good stories.
Good.
And I appreciate that you thought of us.
Oh,
see, this is the business. It's all connections. It's
Amen
all
to that.
connections.
Still
Hey,
open
Terrence,
another year. I graduate next May, so keep my name on the list.
You're doing the right
Send
thing,
me your-
kid.
Send me your stuff.
All right. I'm still working on it a little bit. I'm working on my reel, but
All right.
I'll send you what I've
when
got.
when you've got it ready to look at, send me the link. I'll look at it, and I will tell you. It's all subjective, but I'll tell you what I see and make suggestions. Steve's probably willing to do the same thing.
James
mean,
knows how to
I
get-
did it. You know, I believe it or not, I did it for a guy who worked for CNN for 20 plus years and wants to get back into local TV. Had me look at his reel. I'll do it for anybody that really cares about the business. So.
Well, thank you.
There you go.
And Perry, we'd love to have you back on the show. Maybe we can kind of continue this discussion.
I'll be happy to do this anytime you guys want.
Awesome.
I'm retired. I have a really heavy schedule.
All right, guys.
Perry,
will.
thank you.
Good night, Perry.
All right, good seeing you, Perry.
Yep. Good night. Love you, James. Mean it. Steve. I'll see you in September.
Yep, you will.
Later.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Perry. And to all our guests, I know we are over the allotted amount of time, so I appreciate your time. If anybody else needs to go, you're welcome to, but I'm not kicking anybody off because I do want to get a quick tour of David's Weather Center. We'll give his iPhone one more second to charge. We were just talking about Know Your Stuff, and Smith, I'm going to pop up the picture of your dear friend Dan Keever because I want to talk a little bit about not only how much did this man know, but how much technology has changed over the years. So I'll ask Kit to screen share this on our broadcasting. Can you just walk us through a little bit what we're seeing in this photo, which, by the way, I love this photo.
Okay, well, what you're seeing, he's got the camera he's got is called an Oricon Pro 600. It's double system film. Actually, and he's got a body brace. If you notice that triangular thing off the front of the camera, the loaded magazine, that's a 400-foot load, which is roughly 12 minutes of film in there, and that actually, you can't reuse that, and you had to be really careful because it costs a lot of money. Film did. And he's got a light in his left hand. He's got if you look over the top of the light and under the camera is the audio amplifier, so he's got microphones plugged into that audio amplifier, and who knows where they are, somewhere, one on top of the camera, probably somebody holding one. If you notice on his left shoulder, that's a battery belt, and that's powering the light. And he's got a battery in his left hip pocket there that's powering the camera. And he doesn't have autofocus. He does not have auto iris, so he's got to either guess or get a light reading for the film, and it took a lot more light than video does. And one-man bands were not invented a few years ago. He's probably reporting too because he's wearing a tie. So I know he's doing stand-ups, and gosh, Dan was pretty darn young then.
Wait, what year do you think this photo is?
What? That photo? Probably 1970.
And he is dressed. You might be right. I never thought about that. He might be reporting because
I know he is.
either that or he's very warm.
No, I know he's reporting, James, because he did it.
Yeah.
And I remember when Dan was both a reporter and photographer. This is in Atlanta. WAGA is Channel 5 in Atlanta. Atlanta, Georgia. Those stand for. So that was what it was like then, and you had multiple opportunities to screw up. Trust me.
It's amazing how far the technology has come, and I know we are going to be approaching on David's show very shortly. So let's throw it over to David.
Yeah,
and talking about technology, David, how many computers? And by the way, Scotty, make a note of this. I want to make this a thing now. Anytime a TV meteorologist comes on, how many computers do you have in your weather center?
We have 4 monitors, but let's see. Can I switch this around? There we go. All right. You can see that this is one of our computers, one of our computer monitors. This controls all of our sky cams. We have 5 of them here. 3 of them are in town or close to in town. Another is about 15 miles away off to the west, very close to the Blue Ridge Mountains. That's the one in the middle. Then we have one at Fork Union Military Academy, which is in Fluvanna County, which is actually very close to where we had that EF1 tornado back in February 24th, rode right along the wedge boundary on that day. But then if I double tap control, you can see that I have other options here. So we have Microcast, we have MetVision, and we have the ICE machine. So there's 4 computers in one. Then we come over here to the main graphics computer, and that is the one that we use probably the second most. And then the one that we use the most is the internet computer. This is where we do all of our forecasting, go on all the websites because we don't want to get viruses on our weather computer because that would be bad. And we do have another backup weather computer, but we just don't have the monitor or space for it. And then we also have ESP Live over here, which is our radar, which I used intensively whenever we have snow or storms. But right now it's crystal clear, so I'm not going to show this tonight. And then let's go ahead.
Harry would be proud.
Yes, I know. And then broader look, that's our complete weather center. I do a shot from here. Actually, yes, I do have to use a box because the chief here is 6'6", 6'5", 6'6", so we have to like frame up the shots for him and then kind of accommodate the shorter people on staff, aka me. So we do a shot, and that's roughly the shot you see on TV with me standing there on the wider side. And then they take the graphics full screen, and then over here to the left, that's the green screen, probably about 15, 20 steps away. And then on the other side of the newsroom, or studio, that's where the desk is. And as you can see, all the cameras, they do not have wheels. They are stationary. They are robotic cameras that they can be controlled back in the control room. And then we have our new little interview set, since we have a programming here that is taped every Friday afternoon, and it airs during the day on Sunday. And they do that. We also have a few reporters stand over there from time to time, like we had earlier this afternoon for the 5. Obviously, I'm not going to use it now because the lights aren't on, but that's pretty much the weather center.
Is that WSI or Baron software or something else?
This is Weather Central Fusion, Fusion Studio to be exact. So this is the highest Fusion machine that we can have. It was actually a hand-me-down from a sister station out in either Kansas or Nebraska. They were getting an upgrade. This system was 2 years old. Our old system was 10 years old. So we got a significant upgrade there, and we've only been using this since mid-November. It's only been on air since early December. So it was kind of a good thing that we had some stronger storms and that I was here for it, because I found out over the course of everything that there were some bugs in the system not allowing us to get certain warnings, us not having certain radar feeds updates, and a few other issues and bugs that we couldn't catch when training was going on. So it was a good thing that I was vigilant on that, because it came in handy February 24th.
If you're watching and you ever need assistance with your Weather Center computer graphics system, David Reese is the man to call, by the way. Just throwing that out there.
Oh, why, thank you, James.
He is the expert on all of this. And David, before we let you go for the night, your internet computer there, correct me if I'm wrong, but going back to what we were talking before, but knowing the science, you got lots of fancy computers with lots of fancy graphics, but when you come in at the start of your day, you're doing good old-fashioned weather forecasting, I'd imagine.
Correct. I mean, the first thing I use is probably College of DuPage, and I go on visible, which obviously isn't very useful right now, but I go invisible. It's like, hey, where's the cloud cover? They also have a fantastic analysis data under surface maps, high US RAW. And as you can see, like you get the station plots for everywhere around the country that has one. I zoom in here, it's like, all right, southerly wind, and then like where's the high pressure, low pressure, where's fronts, where's higher dew points, where's dry line like they were dealing with out west, where's a number of other things, and then I eventually get into the actual forecasting, and I've actually found Pivotal Weather as my one little new favorite website to use, just because, let's see, you can do different map zones, like this is the GFS, and you can go into Canada, you can go continental. They actually added Africa, Europe, and a few others to that, so if you want to see the weather go the wrong way or the opposite way in the southern hemisphere, that's always entertaining too. And the thing I really like about this is I can come in here, click on a date, and look at soundings. And that's pretty much my go-to site. And then when I look at other things, I use WSI stuff for Euro data because it comes in as it updates, and a few other things as well. But those are my main forecasting tidbits, and then I come over here and type on this keyboard everything that I need to put on to do like tomorrow's forecast, put together my show, the graphic order, and then 7-day. Basically tell the story that Perry was talking about earlier.
All right, last question, I promise, David. Somebody wants to keep in touch with you on social media. What's the best way to do that?
At WX Reese. I'm on Twitter there. I also have meteorologist David Reese, which I update periodically on Facebook. CBS 19 Weather is our main Facebook page that we use and update, and we update that constantly throughout the day. And I'm also on Instagram, which I'm trying to get a little bit better about that. That's also at WX Reese. And I forget my Snapchat because it's been a while since I've used that, but I need to get better about that. So if you need to find me, it's probably at WX Reese as well.
I downloaded Snapchat, but have not yet made an account. Smith, are you on Snapchat?
Nope.
Our last question, if people want to stay in touch with you, do you have a social media platform you'd like to push them to, or should they just find you on the golf course?
Facebook's fine.
Okay.
Is that a social media platform these days? I don't know.
Yes, it is. No, it's still the most popular of them.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that's the easiest one. That's the easiest one for me to use.
So, well, gentlemen, I really do appreciate your time this evening. I know we've gone into OT, so thank you for sticking around and for sharing your insights. And with that, I'll throw it over to Scotty, who I will put on the spot to tell you what's coming up in future weeks here on the Carolina weather discussion. He's flipping for his notes now.
I got it, yeah. Actually, really cool, James. You would appreciate this, and Kit, you as well. Washington, D.C., out of Washington, D.C. today, there's an article that ran in the Washington, one of the newspapers up there, as well as the Raleigh paper, on why Charlotte is the biggest city without a Doppler radar.
Oh, so don't even get me started.
So maybe there's actually some traction to this. You know, we've been talking, I don't know how long, maybe a year of how we need one here, and maybe
no Doppler in Charlotte.
Yeah, there's no adequate radar coverage here in the Charlotte area.
We got to go to Raleigh, or we got to go to GSP. We have a terminal Doppler radar, but you know that only does 30 miles or so, and really isn't integrated into the system.
Let me check the activity on the Metropolitan Weather Hazards Protection Act of 2015.
So we've been talking about this. We've been talking about this forever. So maybe that's a sign that at least there's an article out of Washington D.C. today about that. So we'll have to keep up with that. But as James was referring to, next week we start off the month of April, our Severe Weather Awareness Month. We're going to be talking about the process of warning storms, and is there any overwarning or underwarning to those? Severe thunderstorm warnings, tornado warnings, flood warnings, and so on. April 13th, we're going to be talking about Piedmont Trophy and how a lot of our summertime and springtime thunderstorms develop in the Carolinas and the Southeast. April 20th, we're going to be talking about how corporate America prepares for severe weather. We're going to have Eric Pruis, who is the meteorologist for FedEx out of Memphis, Tennessee, going to be coming on and talking to us about how they prepare for severe weather. And as we round out the month, April 27th, we're going to be talking about the tornadoes that affected the Dallas, Texas area late last year. Rick Mitchell, meteorologist with NBC out of Dallas, will be joining us, as well as maybe the Costa Radar group as well. We're going to try to get those guys to join on as well. So that's the next month here for the Carolinas Weather Group. We're going to be kind of going into severe weather awareness. I know we talked a little bit about that tonight. We're going to continue those talks throughout the next couple of weeks. And James, I want to tell you, I love this show, and I hope that we can maybe do a part 2 to this show. I know we didn't get to cover everything we wanted to, so I appreciate you getting everyone together tonight doing this.
Absolutely. Thank you for the time, Scotty. I enjoyed it. I hope our guests did and our viewers did as well. And like you said, there's plenty more to talk about.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
And as Perry and Steve were talking about you, we are very very grateful to have you for the Carolinas Weather Group. You've been a great addition.
Glad to do it. Well, I'm in Carolina, so I've got to. And when hurricane season starts, I get real itchy because when I was both as news director and bureau chief, in the Southeast, hurricanes were huge, and we covered them. I had responsibility for the entire South from Texas, the whole Gulf. And since we knew so much about them, I used to get called to New York when things like Hurricane Gloria that you guys don't remember, but it went up the East Coast and went through New York City, and it was very funny. I had my head out the window watching things fall down and blow around in Midtown New York, and everybody else is hiding under desks. I'm saying, what's the matter with you?
Steve, you give me an idea. We may have to get you on sometime this summer and just kind of talk about the different weather events you've covered throughout for 8 years.
Okay, well, I'll be glad to.
That would be awesome to hear all those stories. So we appreciate you. And we'll definitely, if it comes to hurricane season, we have something coming towards Hilton Head. You're going to be our on-site reporter there.
Okay. I'll
take you back to the glory days when you.
I'll get back in the saddle again.
Or if you just need a safe place, you can drive up here to Charlotte. My futon is fantastic.
Oh, yeah, right. I'm back. Can't handle
that. All right, guys. Welcome to the golf course.
Thanks.
Thank you, Smith.
Okay, guys. See you later.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, guys. Well, great show tonight. We appreciate all our guests. David, good luck on your newscast coming up here in just a couple of minutes. We appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thank you for having me on. And I guess there was a confirmed tornado out near the Tulsa area. I'm seeing some damage reports from out there. So it'll be interesting to see what they see when sunrise happens tomorrow.
That's very true. No EF3 tornado graphics out of you guys up there, okay?
Oh goodness, no. I mean, it's tough to get tornadoes up here, first of all, but yeah, definitely none of that stuff. Trust me.
We appreciate it. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you guys all next week. And thanks for watching Carolina's Weather Group.